I'm Pierre Vienings, and I work as a costume designer in the film industry. I also design theatre projects. My education, I basically studied theatre design and I studied couture, and threw these together and kind of pursued a career in the film industry. So question is, how do you start? Yeah, it's always quite tricky. So I actually started working in the theatre. I spent many, many years working in the costume department. And by doing that form of, shall I call it, early training, it basically leads to a different thought process. It teaches you what huge stage settings is all about. It teaches you a completely different medium from film, because somehow theatre is far more exaggerated than film. So from there, yeah, I kind of moved on into the television industry. And the television industry was quite interesting when I started out, because we still used to shoot on 35 millimeters, 16 millimeter film, and kind of watch the progression of how technology's changed. And as technology's change, you change with it. The big thing is when you have all that wonderful early life experience, if I can call it that massive education comes with you. So every once in a while, someone approaches you and they want to shoot on film, you automatically understand the medium you're working in. How do you design a movie? Well, that's the kind of tricky one. It's not really tricky to design the project. It's the process you go through. Every film has its own process, and you kind of approach it from the angle the screenplay basically calls for. So starting with the thought process of what is the end result. Once you know what you're trying to achieve, you move it back to what you're going to start and how you're going to start. Costume design is not a singular part of the project. It is part of the huge project. It is a collaboration between production design, makeup design, special effects, directors, actors, you know. I always say costume design actually really starts taking place the moment you have an actor in front of you and you start working with that actor. It kind of changes a lot of things, because suddenly you're dealing with movement, you're dealing with rhythm, you're working with thought processes. So the whole entire thought process just gets developed the moment an artist kind of appears in front of you. Often you start costume design, you start the illustrations, you start the thought process, and the actors are not cast yet. So you actually work somewhat blindly, but the process is you're creating a character. It's not fashion. Fashion is part of it, but it's most certainly not a fashion show. So the thinking is, what would the character wear? What would the character's nuances be? So you work very, very closely with a director who kind of leads you the way that would lead to the end result of the movie to enhance whatever we're trying to create in its best way. Set life is quite an intimate life. It is a lot of personalities that come into play. How can I put it best? It basically becomes a huge energy, and this energy of all these people that have been hand-chosen to come work together is basically the energy of the project you're creating. So one needs to understand, when a director chooses his heads of department, he's going to choose people that are going to execute his vision. So your creation starts once that director has given you the bigger vision of what the bigger picture is. Then going back, you start analyzing all the smaller nuances that you're trying to get to. Storytelling is quite an interesting thought process, because a lot of people may see it as what you see, that it is not. It is how you get to that story. So we could be working on a dream sequence. It could be a horror movie. Obviously, your whole entire thought process and how you approach that dream sequence is completely different from when you would do a dream sequence, for example, for a Hallmark movie, which is far more softer and romantic. So yeah, open to approach, open to design. That is some of your key elements that you've got to work with. Giving advice to anyone starting out in the film industry, I think the most important thing is to understand how you're going to educate yourself. Education is absolutely paramount. So for costume design, yeah, go to the schools, Go do the courses, they're worth it. That is what it's all about. You cannot walk onto set and not know how to sew. You need to know, and you need to be in full understanding of what your craft really entails. Basics are paramount, which is your education. Your education just gives you a really good basis. Once you've got that, go and assist. Don't rush to try and get to the top of the game quickly. The more you assist, the longer it takes, the more designers you work with, the better you are actually going to be at your craft when you actually become a designer, because your understanding is so much bigger, your scope is going to be so much further and so much wider.